Have you ever wondered what really grows beneath the soil of an old apple orchard? Welcome to Where the Apples Rot, a chilling tale of supernatural inheritance and ancient voices buried beneath the roots. If you enjoy immersive horror stories, hit that like button and stay with me. This one's going to crawl under your skin. They say the land remembers. Not in the way people do, with neat rows of memories filed away like photographs in old albums. No, the land remembers like something wounded and half asleep, twitching when touched, murmuring in its dreams, festering in silence until someone comes back to scratch at the scab. I didn't grow up on the orchard. My mother left it behind before I was born, never talked about it, never even showed me a picture. To her, it was just his land, her father's, a place of silence and sour roots and things better forgotten. So, I was surprised when the lawyer called and said it was mine now. No one else had come forward. No other family. No will. Just the letter he'd left, written in a shaky hand. Let it die if you can. But if not, remember, it knows you. I thought it was nonsense. Grief or senility. I had bills to pay, a daughter to feed, and nothing left in Pittsburgh but eviction notices and broken dreams. A free house and a patch of land. How bad could it be? The drive to Derry Township took 5 hours, and the final stretch turned from cracked asphalt into gravel, then dirt. Trees leaned in overhead, fat with moss and rot, casting long shadows even at midday. I caught glimpses of rusted wind chimes, a tire swing coated in lichen, and at one point, a deer skull nailed to a fence post. Quaint, I thought. Charming in that should have stayed in the city kind of way. The house stood at the heart of the property, hunched and tired, its white paint flaking like dry skin. To its right stretched rows upon rows of apple trees, long, reaching lines of gnarled limbs twisting toward the sky like pleading fingers. And the apples, they were everywhere. That was the first thing that struck me as truly wrong. It was March. Cold still clung to the air, and frost rimed the edges of puddles. But the trees were heavy with fruit, red, glossy, ripe apples that dangled from every bough like ornaments. Some had fallen, rolling in the mud or splitting open on rocks. A few had rotted mid-air, curling into themselves like clenched fists, and the smell, sweet and wrong, like syrup spilled on a corpse. My daughter, Ellie, didn't seem to notice. She was 6 and had a child's ability to filter out dread, at least at first. She just saw trees to climb, apples to pick, a house to explore. She ran ahead, calling out that she saw a rabbit. I almost told her not to go too far, then decided against it. Let her have a moment of joy. The key was in the mailbox, just like the lawyer said. The letter it came with had only 2 lines. Do not eat them. Do not stay after the 3rd night. I laughed out loud. I shouldn't have. The interior of the house was mostly intact, dusty but not decayed. Furniture covered in sheets, photographs face down on the mantel. I found my grandfather's bedroom untouched, his old flannel jacket still slung over the chair, a stack of yellow journals on the nightstand. He'd written until the end. Tiny, cramped handwriting filled every page, growing more erratic the further I flipped. March 12, they're ripening again. She's coming through the roots. I feel her teeth. March 14, the trees talk now. Whisper her name. Mine, too. March 15, she never died. We only buried her. That's not the same. I stopped reading, closed the book, locked it in the drawer. I wasn't in the mood for fairy tales or madness. Not after the year I'd had. That night, I dreamed of tapping. Not banging, not knocking, just the soft, rhythmic tap, tap, tap of something against the windows, against the walls. I thought it was a branch, maybe an animal. When I got up to check, nothing was there. Only the orchard beyond the glass and the apples. Watching Dot on the second day, I tried to call the realtor. I was already thinking of selling, but my phone had no signal, and the landline produced only static. Ellie played in the orchard while I poked around the shed, hoping to find something useful. Tools, maybe, or old records. Instead, I found the hole. It was at the far edge of the orchard, past the last row of trees. A circular patch of dirt where no grass grew, no roots reached. The soil there was darker, damper, and I could see something jutting from it. Something not quite stone, not quite wood. Carved with symbols that pulsed in the corner of my eye, but vanished when I looked directly at them. Ellie called to me then. She'd climbed a tree and couldn't get down. I left the hole, and when I returned later that evening, it was gone. Covered, maybe. Or worse, never there to begin with. But I remembered. My boots remembered. Thick with mud that smelled like copper and mold. That night, I heard the whispering. It started around 2 a.m. I'd been dozing on the couch, the fire crackling low, when I realized it wasn't just the wind in the trees. It was voices, dozens of them, hushed and urgent, overlapping like a crowded room. I pressed my ear to the wall and heard them clearer. Blood remembers. Roots take hold. She fed the land. You will too. I stumbled back, heart thudding, grabbed Ellie from her bed and locked us in the master bedroom. She didn't wake. She never does, not easily. I in the flickering light of the old oil lamp. I saw it again, one of the apples on the dresser. Perfect. Shining. Sitting in the bowl I could swear was empty that morning. I threw it out the window. It landed with a thump, but I didn't hear it hit the ground. I heard it scurry. I barely slept the rest of that night. I watched the walls, half expecting them to bleed. I listened to the floorboards groan like old men turning in their sleep. Somewhere in the orchard, something was still moving, soft as silk dragged over bone, just audible when the wind died down. By morning, it had gone quiet, and I began to question whether I'd dreamt any of it. That's the problem with fear. It rewrites your memory before the sun can rise. Ellie woke cheerful. She never mentioned the whispers, the scurrying, or the apple on the dresser. I asked her if she'd heard anything strange. She blinked at me, shrugged, then said the trees were talking again. But I didn't understand them. I laughed. It came out too sharp. Where did you hear that? She pointed out the window. They said your name. And Mommy? They said something else too. I knelt beside her. What? She hesitated, brow furrowing. They said, she's still hungry. A chill ran down my spine like meltwater. We spent that day inside. I busied myself with cleaning, trying to make the house feel like mine. I threw away the food in the pantry, most of it expired, and made a list of what we needed. I checked the phones again, but they were dead. My car wouldn't start either. It just clicked when I turned the key, like something underneath the hood had frozen or chewed through something. I kept the windows shut. Late afternoon, I finally picked up my grandfather's journal again. I told myself I just wanted answers. I wanted to prove it was all some paranoid delusion, but a part of me already knew the truth. Some things don't rot when they should. Some things don't die. They just change shape. March 16, I see her sometimes, just between the trees. She doesn't walk, she leans, like she's grown out of the bark. Her mouth is full of roots. She speaks in dreams and feeds in daylight. March 17, the apples are her bait. Her blood. She bore them like children, and they remember the taste of us. March 18, my daughter wouldn't listen. She left, took the baby with her. But it's in the bloodline. It always comes back. I dropped the journal. My breath caught. My mouth went dry. The baby. He meant my mother. He meant me. I tried to shake it off. Told myself he was rambling. Senile. He didn't know what he was saying. But then Ellie started drawing. She was sitting at the kitchen table, crayons scattered everywhere. I glanced over her shoulder and froze. It was a tree. At first glance. But its limbs weren't right. Too many joints. Too many fingers. And the trunk wasn't bark, it was skin. Pale, cracked, stretched around something too large to be human. And where the roots touched the ground, there were faces. Half sunken. Screaming. Who taught you to draw that? I asked, my voice more demanding than I intended. She looked up, puzzled. No one. It's just her. Who's her? Ellie? She pointed to the orchard. The drawing went in the fire. I watched it blacken and curl and vanish in sparks. That night was the second, and the orchard sang that I don't mean music, not like anything made with instruments or voice. It was lower, older, like 1,000 mouths humming through hollow logs. The windows fogged with breath that wasn't ours. The walls thrummed. I held Ellie close in bed, one hand over her ear, whispering prayers I hadn't said since I was a child. The house creaked like it was breathing. I could swear I heard something slither across the roof, dragging claws, or roots that I slept in bursts. When I did dream, it was of her, not a ghost, not a woman, something in between. She was tall, but bent, folded wrong. Her face was featureless, stretched like wax in the sun. Her arms hung too low. Her fingers trailed through the dirt, and where they passed, things bloomed. Mushrooms, bone flowers, veins of red fungus pulsing with memory. She reached for me, not to grab, to welcome, and I woke screaming. Ellie didn't stir. I didn't want to sleep on the third night. Some part of me still clung to the warning in that letter. Do not stay after the third night. I'd brushed it off at first as the ravings of an old man scared of his own shadow. But now, after what I'd seen, after what I'd heard, I started to believe it wasn't a warning. It was a countdown. That morning, Ellie was different. She sat at the breakfast table, her little legs swinging beneath the chair, a smile stretched too wide on her face. Her skin had gone pale, ashen, almost, and there were faint, reddish rings under her eyes, like bruises trying to bloom. But her smile, that was the worst of it. It wasn't hers. You feeling okay, baby? I asked. She nodded slowly. The trees like me now. My stomach nodded. What does that mean? They told me their names. One of them used to be Grandma, I think. She cocked her head. She said it was better this way. The orchard gives and gives. It just wants a little back. I dropped my fork. What did you just say? She didn't answer. She just tilted her head a bit more, eyes unfocused, like she was listening to something else, something far away. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, they're almost ready. I packed our things that hour. I threw clothes in a bag, grabbed Ellie's drawings and shoved them into the glove compartment. I slammed shut every drawer, every cabinet. I didn't care if the car wouldn't start. I'd walk us to the nearest gas station if I had to. I'd carry Ellie on my back for 10 miles if that's what it took. But when I went outside, the orchard was gone. Not gone. Changed. The rows didn't end where they had before. New trees had grown, fully grown, tall and gnarled and already heavy with fruit. They closed in around the house like a noose. Where the driveway once was, now there were roots, thick as arms and twisting like ropes beneath the soil. And the apples, they watched me. I swear it. Their skin shimmered in the light like wet eyes. I could feel them tracking my every move. I yanked Ellie inside and locked the door. I want to go back out, she said calmly. They're almost done growing me. I turned her around, knelt down, and grabbed her shoulders. "What did you just say?" She blinked slowly. "They said they only needed one of us. But you're welcome to." That night, the third night, the house didn't sing that it moaned that it shuddered, groaned, cried that I could hear whispers behind the walls, not just around the house anymore. Inside it, in the pipes, the vents, the timber. I saw rot blooming across the kitchen tiles in spirals. In the bathroom mirror, I watched my reflection smile when I didn't. The firewood hissed in the hearth, oozing sap that smelled like meat that I didn't sleep. Not even for a second. Instead, I read that I went back to the journals. The last ones. The ones I'd ignored because I was afraid of what I'd find. March 19, I buried her in the orchard after the storm. We had no choice. She'd changed. The birth wasn't right. She bled black, and the trees drank it. March 21, but she didn't stay gone. She's part of it now, feeding it, growing with it. Her voice is in the branches. Her face is in the fruit. Every year, she comes back a little closer. March 23, my daughter left. But her daughter is coming, and the orchard remembers. It always remembers. My fingers trembled as I closed the book. The pages felt damp, like they'd been sweating. The orchard wasn't cursed, that it was cultivated to family offering. A packed 0.1 life every generation, and the land would thrive. That's why the apples grew out of season. Why the trees whispered. Why they had names. That it wasn't just ROT, that it was memory. Hunger, and now it wanted Ellie. The fourth morning didn't come with light. The windows stayed black, even after I was sure the sun had risen. The house felt submerged, like it had sunk overnight into the orchard soil and was now buried beneath the roots. There was a silence so thick it rang in my ears, like the moments just before a scream. Ellie stood by the back door. She wasn't breathing. She just stood there, pale, still, her eyes fixed on the trees outside, like she was waiting for a cue. "Elle?" I whispered. She turned slowly. Her smile was small, empty. "They said you need to see," she murmured. "It'll be easier if you see." Then she opened the door. I ran after her, shouting, but the air outside wasn't air anymore. It was thick, heavy, like breathing through wet wool. My legs dragged like they were caught in something. I looked down and saw the grass had grown up to my knees in minutes, winding around my calves, pulling gently at me. The orchard was open now, wider than before. A cathedral of gnarled limbs and blackened leaves. The apples pulsed on the branches like cysts. Some dripped, some twitched, and in the center, the earth was torn down a pit. Shallow at first, but breathing. The soil moved in slow, heaving gulps, like something beneath it was dreaming. Waiting, Ellie walked to the edge. I screamed for her. I fought through the grass. I fell once, hands landing in soft, spongy soil that reeked of blood and mold, and when I pushed myself up, my fingers came back slick with something that shimmered like oil and smelled like memory. Ellie turned to me. "She's waking up," she said. Then the ground split. Not cracked, opened, like a wound, and from it rose the tree. It was not a tree as we know it. It had no bark, no sap. Its trunk was made of faces, some screaming, some silent, all watching. Its branches were arms, legs, bones wrapped in roots. And the fruit that hung from it were not apples. They were skulls, infant-sized, still pulsing with life. I fell to my knees. And I remembered. Flashes, not mine, memories inherited, passed down like poisoned heirlooms. My mother's voice, begging her father to leave. Her mother, buried after childbirth. My own birth, and the shadow over the crib that wasn't human. The orchard's whisper, planted in the womb. It wasn't just after us. We were grown for it. We belong to her, Ellie said calmly. She remembers us. She always has. The tree reached down, and I did the only thing I could. I stood between it and my daughter. I didn't know if I could stop it, but I knew I had to choose. That was the final part of the pact. The orchard doesn't take. It waits to be given. And I would not give her. I spoke the words that burned in the back of my skull. Words that were not English, not language, but feeling. Words my blood knew, even if my mind did not. The roots paused. The tree leaned back, and the orchard listened. Then it laughed out a sound like splitting bones and howling wind and weeping children. A sound from under the dirt, from the cracks between atoms. A sound that wasn't sound at all. And then, darkness, not sleep, not death, something in between. I woke 3 days later. They found me at the edge of the orchard, barefoot, covered in soil and dried pulp. Ellie was beside me, safe, whole. The trees were bare. Every apple had rotted off the branches. The roots had withdrawn. The grass lay flat like it had been trampled by giants. The orchard was silent. We left the next morning. I didn't speak to anyone. I didn't answer questions. I signed the sale papers and let the state auction off the land to whoever wanted it next. I didn't care, but I know better than to think it's over. Sometimes, at night, I hear her. In Ellie's room, in the rustling leaves outside the window, in the sound the drain makes when it's almost empty. And when Ellie dreams now, she smiles. She talks in her sleep, says things I don't understand, names I don't recognize. But one thing I do recognize, because she says it clearly every single time, as if speaking directly to the soil, she remembers. If you heard this, let me know in the comments. What do you think this tree is? And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more original horror stories and voiceover psychological horror stories. Until next time, watch the roots of the trees and listen to the whispers of the orchard.